All right, as I said, I came across a week ago or so an article written by John Raine, the Emeritus Professor of Engineering, commenting upon the particular position in which New Zealand universities find themselves as I talk to you right now. It's probably over-dramatising it suggests that New Zealand's universities are in crisis, but they are in serious bother and are professing such across all of this country, because they are arguing that their finances mean that they'll need to cut costs and courses to ensure that they can stay within budget. They were going okay until, well, they weren't going okay. They were utterly reliant, almost importantly, on making themselves work as a financial model upon enrolled students from other countries. And by 2019, over 117,000, it's an extraordinary number, of enrolled students in New Zealand delivered the country a total economic benefit of around $5 billion. In fact, University International 2019 student fee revenue was about $600 million, or around 15% of university's total revenue. So when that suddenly dramatically collapsed, you can understand the model fell apart as well. And those international students haven't come back to New Zealand in the same numbers. You might argue in part not just because of the international economic situation, but also because there are a lot of other universities throughout the world of greater academic standing that are attracting them as well. Now, John Raine joins us from France. John, what time of the night is it there? And thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Michael. It's shortly after 12:30 a.m. here.
Oh, listen, you're a good man. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Listen, mate, you wrote this, I think, the best 3-page article I've ever read in my life, headed Ideological or Logic, Facts Not Feels. And one of your arguments is that universities in New Zealand potentially are making themselves very much worse in terms of quality, because at a time when they are cutting courses, they're actually cutting STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they are keeping, indeed expanding, courses that relate, or what you call relativist postmodern views, and te ao Māori, having precedence over science programs. Have I got that right?
It could be overstating it slightly, Michael, but there's certainly been a significant introduction of more cultural content into the programs, and this has been, it's starting to become at the expense of science courses. And the example given to me by a University of Auckland colleague last week was that it was quite extraordinary that we're launching a course called Epistemological Justice, Indigenising STEM, while at the same time we're being forced to cut science courses. So it is a difficult time. I think that it's vital that science programs are not cut. They are so important in terms of feeding graduates out into industry to support our public service and so on. And I think engineering has not to date suffered in the same way that science has at a couple of our universities.
No, but one of the things that's disturbing in your article, you say, is that at a time when you're cutting these, what you consider to be extraordinarily basic university courses that provide that technological and scientific knowledge, they're actually looking at increasing courses that, or course numbers and courses that are reflective of, shall we say, a non-scientific background, very much a cultural background.
That is true. And I think the greater issue is not that those courses should be present. I think they don't belong in a science program. They might possibly belong in a history of science or anthropology program. But if they are made mandatory, and being of Mātauranga Māori content, that content can't be questioned by non-Māori. So it becomes a form of indoctrination, and that is not appropriate to a university where they should be places of open inquiry.
Yes, and your essential argument, if I can quote you directly, it said, as regards STEM subjects, and that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics subjects, when European colonists arrived in the late 18th century and into the 19th century, Maori scientific technical knowledge was approximate at this stage of other developing scientists at or pre-3000 BC, acknowledging that the spiritualist or spiritual, vitalist, animist parts of Mātauranga Māori would have been differentiated from those other societies by the names for and qualities ascribed to flora, fauna, inanimate objects, and also to the gods such as Ranginui's Skyfather. This was a society without the wheel, without mathematics, physics, chemistry, or biology, but which had extensive phenomenological understandings of food sources, etc. Essentially, spiritual or religious concepts. So your essential argument is, how can you put a society which values that as knowledge, Mātauranga Māori, into something that is inherently empirically based?
Sorry, I missed that last bit. Is inherently.
How can you put something that is, as you've described, essentially a cultural, spiritual understanding of the world, and then graft that into an empirical area like science, engineering, or mathematics?
That's right. That's exactly where that conflict occurs, because with that sort of social justice approach, where the cultural traditional knowledge tends to sit, that is based on things such as sanctity of identity and lived experience. It does include mythical and spiritual ideas, and of course, straight away that tends to conflict with science, which is evidence-based, where ideas are tested through experiment to prove or disprove something. So if I can give you an example, I think it was early last year, a Year 9 student came home from school in New Zealand and told their parent that they'd had a science class that day and they'd learned about properties of water, and they'd been taught that water has a spirit and a memory. And that, of course, had come from a Mātauranga Māori perspective. Now, the science perspective is that water is a molecule of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, and it's got lots of physical properties which have been determined by experiments, such as different boiling points depending on pressure, different ice crystal structures in snow, and so forth. So that kind of seriously, heavily fact-based approach that underpins science, where you're seeking for truths that can be proven or they can be disproven, and therefore they cease to be part of current science. That is an essential character of science, and once we introduce things that are a matter of faith or belief, rather than something that can be proven or disproven, that starts to create that conflict. And therefore, people in the sciences, many suggest that Mātauranga Māori, for example, should sit in a complementary way to science. It brings a cultural perspective from a particular culture. And we have to remember as well that all of our societies went through that evolution of early observation of the environment, learning about what worked, what didn't work, and that a lot of that had support of gods and spirits ascribed to living and non-living objects.